Hello again. Welcome to Ludwig's Wrestling Review Show. I've done an earlier episode about the WCW Galoob wrestling figure line. I thought today I would do another wrestling figure show. This time I'm going to show you a lot of the figures that I'm talking about, and we'll go from there. So first I'm going to introduce you to the WCW Galoob lines and the variants. Okay, here we have the original line of figures that came out. So we've got Scott Steiner, Rick Steiner, Ron Simmons, Butch Reed, Sting, Wyndham, Anderson, Sid Vicious, Luger, Flair with a world title because he is the perennial world champion, Tom Zenk, and Flying Brian Pillman. An absolutely fantastic line of figures. And now we're going to move over to the UK variants that a lot of people don't have or never owned. So we've got Big Josh, El Gigante, Dustin Rhodes, Sting with his pre-ring attire, Jimmy Jam Garvin and Michael Hayes the Freebirds, the repaints of the Steiner brothers, and Lex Luger in his pre-ring attire. So we'll have another line of figures coming up next. If, along like myself, you're in your late 20s or early 30s, you may remember back around about 1986, 1987, in Pound Stretchers plug, promo, cheap pop, they had WWF figures back then. And at the time, it wasn't on TV in Scotland, so I didn't know who these guys were. And then the Hulk Hogan Rock and Wrestling cartoon came out, so I thought they were from the show. But it was guys like Hulk Hogan. These are the thumb wrestlers. Getting a bit big for it now, but you know. So I've got Hulk Hogan, Nikolai Volkov, Big John Studd, and Hillbilly Jim. And that was my first introduction to wrestling figures. And it wasn't until around 1990 when the WWF and Hasbro toy company brought out those figures that the explosion really started. So let's have a look at some of them. Now, as you can tell, my Hasbro collection is not that extensive, but it's one that I like very much. Here we have Big Boss Man, Samu from the Head Shrinkers, Coco Beware, $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase in the back there, Mr. Perfect, Nasty Boy Jerry Sags, Scott Steiner at the front, Hulk Hogan way at the back there, Nasty Boy Brian Knobbs, Butch from the Bushwhackers, Andre the Giant, Typhoon from the Natural Disasters, and Luke from the Bushwhackers. As wrestling progressed, WCW started bringing out more figures, so I'm going to take you over now to what I like to call the Viz Sid the Sexist collection, because Kevin Nash looks like Sid the Sexist. So there's Kevin Nash, the Giant, Goldberg, Ric Flair at the back there, Macho Man Randy Savage, and Rick Steiner. Great figures, good likenesses. Well, not this collection, they look like Viz characters. But with the WWF Hasbro line, it was hugely extensive. You could get almost anyone. The only thing I didn't like about this line was they tended to get quite wiggly and loose. Their motions or the maneuver they were to do would get worn over time, so they would become very wiggly and loose, and that kind of sucked. But there were several wrestlers who were never released under this line who were there at the time, and two of them are just great wrestlers, hard guys, tough guys, and that was Barbarian and Haku, so I was sad that they never got released. Next up we're going to look at the larger figures. Here is some of the action figures from the last line of WCW's Toy Biz wrestlers. Sadly, this line was discontinued when WCW went out of business. Again, I don't have an extensive collection. A lot of them were sold when I moved to the United States, but these are ones that I've kept over time and came back into my possession. So we've got Hulk Hogan, Vampiro, who is quite rare, was never released in America, Rey Mysterio, Wolfpack Sting. At the back there is Rick Steiner. Here's Scott Steiner, Big Papa Pump. And they were smart enough to actually give you a referee. Because how great is it to have a wrestling match with your figures and have a referee bump? Fantastic. Moving over here, there he is. 16-time champ, probably the greatest wrestler of all time, and one of the most recognized. Nature Boy Ric Flair with the real World Heavyweight title. Now, the next figure I'm going to show you is quite a rare one. Because it's a wrestling figure that was never released as a wrestling figure. From Rocky III, Hulk Hogan is Thunder Lips. And if you don't believe me, he is Thunder Lips, the ultimate male. Now you may be asking yourself, as you sit there at your computer and look on Ludwig's Wrestling Review Show on MySpace, why does this guy still have wrestling figures? Well, it goes part and parcel with wrestling. How could you have an entertaining sport like that, and a lot of time it's aimed at kids, with nothing for the kids to do? As I was growing up watching it, I got to see many different promotions. WWF, WCW, ECW, New Japan Pro Wrestling, All Japan Pro Wrestling, USWA, Smoky Mountain, and a lot of other little promotions along the way, some of the British wrestling. And for me as a fan, it was great to just be able to sit there with all these wrestling figures to do cross-promotional matches. You could have the Four Horsemen, the greatest group of all time, go against Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage, the Mega Powers, in a blockbuster feud. You could have Brutus the Barber Beefcake feuding with Arn Anderson over the TV title. You could have the Steiner Brothers, the Natural Disasters, Doom, the Road Warriors, the Nasty Boys, the Bushwhackers, Tom Zenk and Brian Pillman in a Survivor Series style tag team elimination match. You could have Sting go against the Ultimate Warrior for the Intercontinental title. You could have Andre the Giant and El Gigante form up as the tallest tag team in history, taking on Yokozuna and anyone else, really. You could have the Head Shrinkers and Yokozuna with Jimmy Superfly Snuka as your Samoan team. You could do anything. And it was great because you could make your own card. You could rewrite history. You could have Hulk Hogan as a jobber, losing to Tom Zenk. You could have anyone you wanted as your champion of your promotion, winning your belt on your rules. You know, that's why I loved wrestling figures, and I still do. You can make the matches, you can make the squashes, you can make jobbers out of anyone you want, you can make champions out of anyone you want. That's the fun that comes with being an owner of wrestling figures. You become the promoter. You become the guy who puts together the cards, you become the booker, you pick your champions and you make the matches. That's why I love wrestling figures. Because that's what wrestling's all about. Imagination and innovation. So if there's anyone out there with any wrestling figures that they've got that aren't in my collection, and they're just sitting around and they don't want them anymore, make a contribution to Ludwig's Wrestling Review Show. Make a contribution to my collection. It will be greatly appreciated. Greatly. And with that being said, hope to see you guys soon. And if you guys have got wrestling figures out there, cherish them. They're your heroes. And that's why you got them. Thank you. This has been Ludwig's Wrestling Review Show, Episode 7. See you at the matches. Enjoy the wrestling. Bye-bye, folks.